Welcome to This Explainer. You know, if you've ever studied population dynamics, you've probably noticed that the friction between population growth and the theoretical models predicting it has sparked some literally massive historical debates. For the longest time, one extremely pessimistic voice kind of just dominated the room. But today, we're exploring a seriously fascinating counterargument, Michael Thomas Sadler's density theory. He was the great 19th century challenger to Malthus.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to meet the critic himself, break down his core law of population, trace the shift from agrarian to industrial societies, witness the intellectual showdown with Malthus, and then finally examine the criticisms and the fascinating slum paradox.
Section 1. Meet the Malthus critic. So who exactly was M.T. Sadler? Let's step back into the early 19th century, a time when Thomas Malthus's rather gloomy views on overpopulation completely, and I mean completely, dominated academic thought.
Enter Michael Thomas Sadler. Born in 1780, this guy wasn't just some abstract theorist sitting in a room. He was a British Tory member of Parliament and a highly respected economist. He lived right in the thick of the Industrial Revolution, watching society change at breakneck speed. In 1830, he published a massive work called The Law of Population, which was a bold, daring challenge to that established gloomy status quo, before he passed away in 1835.
Now, since Sadler was a contemporary of Malthus, he intimately understood every single nuance of Malthusian theory. He didn't just casually disagree with the guy. He systematically studied Malthus's points so he could formulate a highly precise, alternative demographic model of his very own.
Section 2. The Law of Population. Let's really unpack Sadler's core argument from that seminal 1830 book. Sadler viewed human reproduction not as some fluctuating economic variable, but as a universal law of nature. He basically wrote that the law regulating the growth of animals and plants is, at its core, the exact same as the law regulating human population. He firmly believed we're all bound by the exact same biological rule.
So the real crux of this is what we call his density logic. Sadler proposed a direct inverse relationship between population density and fertility. To put it simply, as population density begins to rise, the birth rate, or fertility, naturally begins to fall. He saw this as an automatic self-regulating mechanism that's just built right into nature.
Section 3. Agrarian to industrial shift. So how does this supposed natural law actually play out as human civilization evolves?
Well, according to Sadler, in an agrarian society, human reproduction is deeply tied to the need for labor. When density is low, you need more hands to work the fields, right? So fertility stays high. But as society transitions into an industrial era, populations become more educated, and suddenly family size starts being heavily influenced by socioeconomic status instead.
In this new, logical, industrialized society, a massive paradigm shift happens. People start associating a smaller family size directly with wealth and happiness. The prevailing message becomes fewer children mean a more prosperous, happier household. Therefore, as density increases in these growing urban centers, this socioeconomic mindset naturally drives the birth rate down.
Section 4. Refuting the Malthusian checks. All right, this brings us to the ultimate intellectual showdown of the era. How did Sadler use his framework to just completely tear down Malthus's famous theories?
The contrast here is absolutely stark. Malthus gave us this terrifying mathematical ratio. Population grows geometrically, like a multiplication table, while food only grows arithmetically, like simple addition. To Malthus, starvation was just inevitable. Sadler? He completely rejected this. He offered a highly optimistic view where society organically and painlessly lowers its own birth rates simply by becoming more densely populated.
Sadler really went on the offensive here. He totally rejected Malthus's formulas, and because of that, he tossed out his preventive and positive checks, that really grim idea that war, disease, and famine were somehow biologically necessary to keep populations in line. Instead, Sadler argued that as populations grow, human innovation naturally steps up to increase food production alongside it. To him, humans are entirely capable of continuously managing their food supply without catastrophic intervention.
Section 5. Criticisms and the slum paradox. Let's look at where this all falls apart. Sadler's view sounds wonderfully optimistic, but does it actually hold up in the real world?
We really have to ask, is there any actual biological basis for this theory? Sadler claimed this was a hard law of nature, identical to plants and animals. But does the science actually back that up?
The short answer? A hard no. Critics absolutely tore the theory apart because Sadler failed to clarify a really crucial biological difference: fecundity, which is the biological potential to reproduce, versus fertility, which is the actual number of births. Biologists found absolutely zero evidence that living closer together somehow reduces a human's biological capacity to have children.
And then we hit the ultimate contradiction to Sadler's rule: the slum paradox. Think about slum areas. Population density there is at its absolute peak. People are literally living shoulder to shoulder. According to Sadler's strict law, fertility in these areas should just plummet. Yet reality shows us the exact opposite. In these highly dense, economically challenged areas, birth rates remain exceptionally high. It completely proves that density alone doesn't just organically cure overpopulation.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating puzzle, doesn't it? Sadler's natural, biological density theory was totally debunked, even if his observations about educated, industrial families wanting fewer children definitely had some merit. So I'll leave you with this to think about. If simply living closer together doesn't naturally curb population growth, what social, economic, or cultural factors do you think truly drive demographic changes in our modern world? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll see you in our next explainer.